Welcome to episode 54, Thrashcast. Tonight I am your host. My name's Ken, and joining me are my co-hosts Jim and Billy, and we have a special guest tonight. We have Tad Legger drummer from Toxik. Remember that 80s classic speed metal thrash band? He's here tonight to talk with us about the first album, and I see Billy's going to hold him up there. So we have them both. We'll talk. We can talk about both as the pod goes on tonight. But before we get into our conversation, we just wanted to mention, where you can find the Thrashcast. We are on our website, which is www.horrormetalsounds.com. You can find us on our YouTube channel. You can also go over to Spotify, and you can even find us on Rumble. So we do appreciate all the comments that we get and all the likes and subscribes. We're doing really good. We're over about 4,500 subs on YouTube, which is great. So we're really happy about that. It's onwards and upwards as we like to look at it. So without further ado, as we move with our show, we're not going to do our normal first opening segment from news and what's spinning, and we're decided to go in with some questions. So Tad, we've come up with some questions for you that we wanted to ask you, and we'll start with the first question. Now, I'm going to start with an art one for you, Tad, because I know you're an artist as well. I know you've done artwork, and the first album is classic because it has the Ed Rep cover. So I was just curious, with that album cover, did you recommend Ed? How did the whole thing about Ed? Yeah, Billy's got it right there. How did that whole thing come about?
Well, originally, as soon as we signed with Roadrunner, I had a lot of ideas for artists, I wanted to use. I wanted to get Bernie Wrightson.
Right.
So actually, I called up Bernie Wrightson, and he was like, he's like, I can sell you something that I already have. He's like, but I can't do anything new. He's like, I don't have any time because, I wanted to do sort of mutated elephants, and really take a horror show approach,
nice.
But that didn't quite work. But then Roadrunner invited us into the office, and they showed us that Circle Jerks cover that Ed Repa had made. It's like the big V.
Oh yes, yeah.
And we were like, when we all loved it, we're like, that's great. We're like, yup, we'll go with him, and he just killed it. I think I probably think this a little bit better just because, he put so much detail into it, and I love the colors on that. But, Ed Repka so much. He gave these two records so much visual identity. I think especially back in the 80s, there was no internet. There was there was no way to know what these records sounded like. So you said oh, that Iron Maiden record looks pretty dope. That, Motorhead, I'm sure that's what we bought those records based on the cover, and so he totally delivered. Super cool guy. I still talk to Ed all the time. I've seen him at a couple of horror conventions and stuff. Really nice guy.
Cool.
Oh, and
yeah.
One more, because when the art director at Roadrunner at the time was working, he dropped a lit cigarette on Ed's original painting of World Circus. And if you look real hard, you can actually see the burn mark because they were so fucking lazy. No one could take out a little piece of green paint and fix it. I posted before on the internet, I was like, man, how lazy can you be? You drop, you burn a fucking original painting. We're like, should we fix it? Nah, who cares? Who are fucking these guys? Let's send it out. Send it to Brent. And also when Ed gave him the original painting for Think This, they ripped it off the canvas to put it in a drum scanner. And, I don't think they ruined the painting, but it's definitely not the way it should have been handled. Yeah, he was not thrilled about
that. Jeez.
Oh, man. That's crazy.
Roadrunner, man. I don't know, Monty Connor for Roadrunner is still a good friend of mine. And he does some interesting posts, mostly based on album covers. And I didn't know, he did one about the Pestilence album, Consuming Impulse.
Yeah, that's a great cover. And,
but the guys in the band had given Roadrunner a different painting. They were like, this is what we want. And Rotor were like, no, threw it out and just put, they just picked that, which turned out to be, it's a great cover, but I would be pretty upset if I've been like working on songs for 3 years and your album's finally done and your label was like, your idea for artwork is terrible. We have a better idea. We know better what should be on your cover than you. You're just a bunch of idiots,
Oh man,
the music business, the worst,
yeah,
the worst.
I can imagine.
Dude,
Yeah.
And who I heard, it's a little aside, I was a big New York hardcore fan. And I used to go to a lot of shows, like the Cro-Mags, and after that hardcore band Leeway at one time, I was really good friends with those guys. And their management was so corrupt when the Cro-Mags were the only New York hardcore band to get a major label deal. They got signed to Profile, same label as like Run DMC. And their manager went to their lawyer, like, okay, well, you can sign the Cro-Mags, but you have to give me my own record label, and then I own the Cro-Mags through there. And usually, like, you have a manager to keep your record company in line. But if your manager is your record company, you're screwed. And that's what happened. He just took over and, like, was a total scumbag. And then Leeway's record, they shelved it for, like, a year.
Really?
They had a lot of hype on the street, and for no reason at all, was just not a priority for anyone, shelved it, it's an ugly scene.
Wow.
It's brutal.
That's crazy. I can imagine as an artist, you have to deal with so much crap, even if you're like a visual artist or if you're even like a musician, the shit you got to deal with in the music industry.
Yeah, but that makes you think how many good albums got shelved just because the record company were being dicks. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and and Wargasm were also on the same label. They also got signed to Profile, and he did nothing for them at all. And Why Play Around? That's an incredible record.
Yeah, I love that record.
I kind of feel like Wargasm almost kind of beat Metallica at their own game on some of those albums. They're so catchy, man. And they just sat on that record, man. They just slept on it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Ken, we got to add that to the list to tackle Wargasm.
Yeah.
We forgot about that album. Yeah,
it's a good album. I like that.
I actually just Bob Mayo, the bass player singer from Wargasm, I just did a video for. He's got a project called Robot. Oh man, this is embarrassing. Robot Monster Army. Monster Army. Okay. And I made a video for him a couple months ago called Day of the Robot. It's really good metal.
Nice. Cool.
Sorry, Bob. Sorry, I couldn't recall that.
That's all right. No worries. No problem.
I'm not apologizing to you. I'm apologizing to Bob Mayo.
Of course. Understood. So Jim has a question here that he wanted to ask you. He wanted to know what your influences were. Like, do you have like a favorite drummer that you're influenced by at all? Or
I would say like the first drummer that really like I noticed was Bill Ward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like there's Bill Ward's the kind of drummer like he could do the crazy like Symptom of the Universe, which Toxik used to cover.
Yeah.
But he could also do like Behind the Wall of Sleep, which is just like straight ahead beat, but it's like the smoothest beat ever, really, and really not always playing in time. If you listen to Sap, there's some wild tempo changes, but and my drum teacher at the time, he was like, oh man, it's like this guy's tempo is off. But I was like, well, what's he doing here? What is he doing in Rat Salad? And my drum teacher was like, there's no technique going on. It's just, he's just going nuts. I was like, that's the kind of drummer I want to be. Just flailing, raw, and so those first, years I was learning, I played along to a lot of Sabbath records.
Nice.
And then I also really got into the 70s Scorpions.
Oh, wicked.
Wicked. And all the way back to like the first album, like Lonesome Crow.
Yeah.
That's like nobody recognized. That's an amazing acid rock record that's fucking, and it's got crazy like jazz fusion chops, but then the drummer they got after that, Rudy Lenners, who's on like Virgin Killer.
Yeah.
And In Trance, that dude like was a huge influence on me, man. He did like some really great aggressive beats like Polar Nights, stuff like that. That was like really inspiring to me. And then I would say like what for metal drummers, it would be Les Binks, R.I.P. who just
got arrested,
passed away. That guy, like I memorized every single thing he did, on Stained Class, and on Hellbent. I used to actually Brian, the bass player from Toxik. We went to high school together, and his house was literally like right next to high school. So we'd go over to his house at lunch and like throw on, like Judas Priest and Maiden and crank it up and eat like hot dogs for lunch, and just like worship the greatness of Les Binks. It was fucking great.
Wicked.
That's cool.
Very cool.
Then I would say like coming then after that along Kim Ruz for Merciful Fate.
Yeah.
Oh, and I also got to say Stefan Kaufman from Accept.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you
what
classic
really like kind of put me into the underground early was I was hanging out at the Steiner. I had a Sabbath shirt and I met these like older kids who were working there, and they were actually like, going down to the city and getting records. And that was the first time I heard Fast as a Shark by Accept.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like, there was nothing like that, previous. You had Exciter, maybe like, Phil Taylor, another big failure of mine, Phil Taylor from Motorhead. Definitely. Cool. Those would be the really like that, like the core, after that. There's lots of other drummers that I like.
Yeah.
But I would say those are the records that I play to over. Oh, and Mackie Jason from Chromax.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That dude is incredible. And then like after, I was like, when Merciful Fate broke up, I felt like kind of lost because, they set the bar like so high. And when they're gone, there wasn't anyone doing anything like good musicianship that was really heavy and evil, and being a drummer, I started getting into, I started going to shows at CBGBs and stuff like that. And hardcore had all the best drummers like Felix from DRI. He was like 13 years old, and I was just fucking maniac. I was like, I can't believe this kid is 13. That stuff was good. Crumbsuckers. I can't remember the name of that drummer. That guy was great too.
Cool. I like Crumbsuckers. They're cool band.
Yeah, really cool guy. We hung out with them a couple times. There was when they used to have it was called College Music Journal.
Okay.
Like back in the 80s, where they do all the college charts, and Toxik actually did really well. And we did a show with it was Crumbsuckers, us, King's X, and Dream Theater before they were Dream Theater when they were Majesty.
Oh, no, cool.
So there was this round table of like John from Dream Teacher, Chuck from the Crumbsuckers, Josh from Toxik, all around the table like trading like licks. Too bad I didn't have an iPhone back then. That would have been a sick video. And all talking about how much we hate Roadrunner.
Fair enough.
Oh, I think the guitar player from Carnivore was there too.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Sweet.
Yeah, that was a great band. I saw Carnivore back when they were still looking like Manowar, when they wore like the big bear rugs and shit.
Right. Yeah, before they made the change. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually my very first show. It was Carnivore opening for Raven.
Oh, cool. Oh, so you saw Raven way back in the day.
Yeah. Still when they had Rob Wacko Hunter, and apparently like their drummer Rob would just like he would disappear. Like I guess they were ready to go on, and like they hit the stage. Like, has anyone seen our drummer? I heard he had a bit of a substance fascination, but that's okay. We all I'm not well clever.
And so the next question Billy wanted to ask you was what bands did you enjoy touring with when you were part of Toxik, and you have any reasons why you like a certain band over another?
Well, touring with King Diamond was just the greatest, and again, more Roadrunner disses. King Diamond actually went to Roadrunner because we were both on the label at the same time. He's like, I want to take out Toxik. This is for Conspiracy.
Oh yeah, wicked album.
And he was like, I want to take Toxik as support act. And Roadrunner was like, no, don't take Toxik. You should pick someone else. And he was like, no, I really want to take Toxik. And they're like, no, you really should go with someone else. But he insisted, and we had the worst luck, man. Like the first day of the tour, we rented a like a cargo van. Oh, a box truck for the gear. And as our friend was driving it back from the rental place, he went over a low-hanging tree and it peeled off the top like a can opener. No. So we're like, okay, so we're fucked. And King Diamond was like, nope, no problem. You could put all your gear in with my trucks. And then there was another time where our van broke down. He was like, no problem. Get on the bus. You could ride on the bus with us to the next show. I mean, like the most professional, supportive guy ever. Super nice. And one really funny story, like a lot of times we'd end up in the same, truck stops together, his bus and our van, we'd stop. And there would always be, people like pimps, trying to hook you up with girls or drugs. and they go over to I think it was like Andy and King. Some guys like, hey man, you guys looking for some weed, looking for some coke? They're like, no, we're okay. It's like, how about some girls? I got some hot girls. And they're like, no, that's all right. And the guy paused. He's like, what kind of band are you? He looks so confused. So I'm sure most people are like, yeah, where can we get some meth? You got some coke? You'd get laid.
And Pat,
most people would say yes to all of those questions, But those guys were super mellow. Didn't really party much. Snowy Shaw was super nice guy too.
Snowy.
And Tad, you guys hit Montreal with King Diamond, right?
Yeah, we played.
I was at that show.
Oh, you were at the Foo Foo show?
Yeah.
I heard we didn't sound very good because a couple of people came in on stage, everything sounded good to us, but when we talked to some people later, they said the mix wasn't good, or I don't know. Did it sound okay to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago. That was 89 maybe, but I wasn't disappointed. I was a huge fan of Toxik at the time. So I'll be honest with you. I preferred Toxik over King Diamond.
But
that's just my taste.
Well, my taste, I'm a huge Merciful Fate fan. But the only King Diamond album I really like is Abigail.
Abigail, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's almost Merciful Fate. It's I can't believe it's not Merciful Fate.
Yeah, I like Merciful Fate more than King Diamond. So yeah, I agree there. Those early albums are masterpieces.
Yeah.
Oh, it's changed. It should. I think they're really the first band that brought, because back in the day, you either had bands who were good musicians, whatever, say band like Queensryche or something, but that's kind of nice, safe music. You didn't have people like Venom, and on the other hand, it was Satan, but it was it was very raw, straight ahead. But Merciful Fate came at you with super intelligent lyrics and incredible melodies and riffs, And after they left, I felt there was a vacuum that never really got filled, To this day, I can't really think of another band that's really atmospheric, good musicianship, and just evil, just really, really dark. Even King kind of left that, there's no more satanic stuff. It's story time.
Yeah.
Don't really like the storytelling mode.
Yeah, agree.
Fair enough. Cool. So I have a question. I wanted to know maybe some updates on two of your other bands. I love Blood Farmers. I think the two albums that I have, they're wicked. And Lucertola, which I know is the Italian word for lizard, and I know you're a huge horror fan, so I know for a fact that you love the Giallo movies and stuff, which I'm positive you do. What's going on with both those bands currently?
Well, Blood Farmers, once we we toured Europe, and it was great. We played Roadburn and Hammer of Doom Festival in Germany. It's fucking incredible. And the last show was really good. We opened for Pentagram in Helsinki. And nice. There's a video up on YouTube of that. That's, oh man, that was such a great show. That was a lot of fun. I really had fun. But then after that, Dave, the guitar player, he went on, he did a record with Church of Misery, another really excellent doom band. But then after that, he's mostly concentrating on, like, he also works for Grindhouse Releasing. He does all of their promotions, and also they own a lot of 35 millimeter prints. So any people who want to screen the stuff, Dave's the one who arranges all that.
Okay.
Oh, and you know who also works for Grindhouse is the drummer from Siege, Rob Williams.
Oh, okay, I know that name. Yeah, yeah.
You know, one of the earliest grind bands. You know, they were influenced on like Napalm Death, but they're all part of the you know, Grindhouse family. It's good. Everyone's into evil heavy music at Grindhouse.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
But yeah, but exciting news on the Lusitala.
Okay.
I've got 2 songs now that are all completely tracked, and we're now mixing. Cool. And the first one we're going to release is called Long Pig.
Okay.
And if you know, like, a long pig is where in cannibal tribes in Africa, that's how they refer to white people, is the long pig.
Yeah, I know.
There's also a big, like, cannibal fetish, like, thing online also. But mostly it's my tribute to movies like Cannibal Holocaust, Eaten Alive.
Yeah.
You know, so super brutal. And my friend Paul, do you guys are familiar with Morgue Supplier?
No,
I don't think I've heard.
Really innovative kind of grind band.
Okay.
And then he's also in another band called Drug Honky,
who
I really love. Who are sort of like if Godflesh were like a live band. That's kind of like what Drug Honky is like, but it's a little more doomy.
Okay. Cool.
And so he's doing the vocals, and I'm doing the guitars, and my drummer also he did a really killer bass track. We tried to get a real kind of like Black Key Voivod overdriven bass.
Nice.
And then there's going to be like a full length animated video for the thing we've got. I have my friend Cliff Peck is doing some incredible art through AI and stuff. So we're going to have, like, you know, some really like twisted, gut twisting visuals. You know, it's going to be really like gory and you know, as twisted as we can make it.
Nice. Well, I'm happy to hear that, because there's not a lot of information about Lusitala, but I'm happy to hear that. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, you know, well, I see some people, like, you know, even when their project isn't active, they constantly post stuff, and I don't know. I don't really want to do that. I don't want to post stuff until I've got something, you know, something new for people to see. You know, I don't want people to get tired of it.
Yeah, I hear you. That makes sense. That makes total sense.
But Lusitala has really been a really fun, you know, extension for me. When I started, you know, I was mostly, you know, a drummer forever, but I would always have downtime, especially doing the Toxik records. I'd have like weeks doing nothing. So I would sit around with somebody's guitar, and I ended up with some riffs. And Josh actually helped me out on the first Lusitala record. You know, we recorded it at his studio, and he did all the vocals too. Came out great.
Cool. Was that an actual release or a demo? I thought it was a demo, or was there?
It was a demo. Yeah,
a demo. Yeah, okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah. Because I was searching around for like an actual album, I couldn't find anything. But
yeah, I mean, I did make some physical CDs at one point, but they all sold out. I'm thinking maybe when we do the new one, I'll repress that, you know, and maybe do another edition that has both, you know, all the songs.
Well, that'd be sweet. Awesome, man. All right, so Jim has another question. Jim wanted to know what genre or bands of music do you listen to today? Like, is there any new bands you like, and what do you think of the, I guess, bands of today? Like, what's your thoughts about modern music?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think, you know, a lot of people say like, oh, it's not as good as it was here and there, or they talk about the night, but it's like anything, same as it ever was. You have to dig. There's great bands out there, but, you know, and I feel terrible for bands today. It's like, how do you stand out in, you know, an ocean of, you know, of bands? You know, it's really tough. But I would just say like last year, I liked that 1349 album.
Wicked.
Yeah.
I thought that was fucking great. I think those guys bring back a lot of like classic vibes. You know, they cover Voivod and Possessed and stuff. So like and as a drummer, that guy Frost, I mean, I don't think there's too many better drummers in the world than that guy. I heard he can't get a work visa though.
Oh, really?
Well, he's got a criminal record.
Right. Yeah.
So I think he can mostly only tour in, because when I used to work at Red Distribution for a while. I was working in the graphics department there, and I was never much of a Slipknot fan, but we did some stuff like the guy, Slipknot was so hot they gave every member like their own record label, and the drummer, he signed Satyricon, and I was like, oh, right on. I was like, that's cool. So I did some ads and tour posters for Volcano. And I was actually emailing Frost a little bit back and forth. I was like, oh, dude, that's great. Are you finally going to come to States? He was like, yup, we're booking the tour. And then he emails me and he says, like, oh, no tour. I can't get a visa. I was like, oh, man. But Joey Jordison stepped up and he played that whole tour so they didn't have to cancel.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So I was like, okay, well, I don't have much love for Slipknot, but that's a stand-up thing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you honestly, the three of us aren't fans of Slipknot either.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, this is shit I would argue with my friend Monty, because Monty at Roadrunner, he signed them. He signed Slipknot. I looked at the cover. I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, this looks like Mr. Bungle at a cheap, like county fair. I was like, this is whack, man. I was not with it. And signing Nickelback.
Oh, God.
It's like, what are you thinking, man? I was like, have you started using like hard drugs or something? But hey, the joke's on me because all those bands sold fucking millions of records.
Yeah, we don't like them, but I guess you can't argue with that.
No.
Oh, and Monty tried to get me into the Typo Negative too, because they needed a drummer at some point, and I'd always just kind of finished up the Toxic thing, and I decided to go back to school. I was going to college for art, and then so I was like kind of not that interested, but I was like, I wanted to follow up. Monty, hooked me up, so I talked to their manager. And I was basically saying, I was like, well, I could do this. I was like, but, school is my priority. And this guy, he didn't like hearing that at all. And apparently, bitched back to me. I was like, what's this guy's problem? He could have been playing with Pete Steele. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I could, but I'm sure, even if I had joined the band, I'm not going to get a piece of, any real money. I'm sure it would just be like a salary job,
Yeah.
So
it's understood.
So I passed and I stayed with school.
Where did you go to art school?
School of Visual Arts.
Oh, cool. Nice. That's a good school.
Oh, it was really good. That was the only place where I looked, and they were actually some comic book artists I knew, were teaching there. It was the only place I could find. And it was amazing alumni, like Liz from Electric Wizard. She was also there. She was in another band called 13 at the time.
Okay.
I should remember to go see, I remember seeing them play with Pentagram in the city. Ooh. And also Paris from the Cro-Mags. He also was School of Visual Arts.
What comic book artists were teaching you? Do you know? Did you have any as your teacher?
The guy, Carmine Infantino.
Yep, Carmine. Yeah, that's awesome.
Old school guy, and the guy, and also Len Wein, the guy who worked on Swamp Thing.
Yep.
Probably one of my all-time favorite comic books. So I was like, this is where I want to go, and it was a great school, man. It was very, very competitive, but I never realized I actually liked the competition. I was never a competitive person, but there were classes where you do your project, put it up on the wall, and your work wouldn't even get discussed unless someone else in class said that's dope. So a lot of pressure, but I enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah, I went to Ontario College of Art here in Toronto. So, but when I was getting ready to go to art school, I was looking up schools in the States and stuff. And I always thought about the School of Visual Arts because I've heard a lot of good things about it. So it's cool that you went there. It's awesome.
It was cool, man. But it's, New York is so expensive.
I know.
Tuition alone. And then when I was going I couldn't afford to live in Manhattan, when I was going. So I lived in kind of a sketchy part of the Bronx. I got a real slice of life, I was kind of nice green lawn suburbans, and I liked the excitement, and it was real easy to get weed. But I'd have people pulling guns on me, and unfortunately I had a nice neighbor, once I moved, he's like, Tad, this block, it's kind of like a prison. There's people who are gonna they're gonna check you and test you and see, if you flinch. He's like, don't flinch and don't, but don't say anything stupid. And fortunately, I'm still here today. I have been stabbed though. I did get stabbed once.
You've been stabbed? Really?
Yeah, I got stabbed and slashed in Washington Square Park trying to buy some weed.
Oh, shoot.
Guy pulled out a box cutter on me. He was like, give me your wallet. I was like, fuck you. And so he stabbed me in my arm. And then he tried to go for my face, but fortunately he was all cracked out and he missed. And I kicked him down to the, to the ground and ran. And then I came back with 3 of my friends and we beat the fuck out of him.
Nice.
Fucking bounced his head off the curb.
Oh my God. Man, I guess New York back then was pretty wild though.
Well, in the 80s, man, there were blocks you didn't want to fuck with. I mean, there was a bar too where Toxik played called the Lismar Lounge, and it was right around the corner for the head of the Hells Angels chapter. And me and my girlfriend kind of liked it. We were like, because there were people breaking up huge blocks of 8 balls of cocaine and stuff there. It was all Hells Angels, and it was like being in an episode of Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah.
So we would go back there, but the neighborhood was if you were on the Hells Angels block, they had surveillance everywhere, so you were safe there. No one was going to fuck around there. But the 6 blocks around there were kind of raw. Right. But we'd still go back because they had an excellent jukebox.
Oh man! Oh my God!
That's wicked.
It was, New York City, babe. You had to watch your back, man. But it was exciting, man. Times Square had all these, that's just when the Grindhouse theaters were still there.
Yeah, back in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, it's half porn, but still some horror movies.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was afraid to go. I wouldn't go in any of these theaters by myself. So I would get a couple of friends, from school. We have a little in case shit went down because there's homeless people, sleeping in there and hookers turning tricks. And we're in this one movie. I forget what it was. I think it was a cannibal movie. And we look up and we hear water. I was like, is there a leak? No, it was this dude over there, and he was pissing, but just straight up in the air. And he looked right over us. He was like,
Oh my God!
It was rad. It was rad.
I could imagine. Well, that's a good. Sorry, go ahead, Ted.
I'm sure you got seedy places around Toronto, though, right? Or maybe back in the day.
We did, yeah. Toronto used to be pretty seedy way back when, but now it's
We still got 1 or 2 spots.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a city. There's going to be something. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, this is a good segue because Billy's question to you was, do you have any wild stories about being in Toxik? On the road, anything happen? Any crazy stories?
Yeah. When let's see, a couple on the King Diamond tour, there was one they were driving. There's this long ass road. You probably know it. I think the road that goes between Toronto and Montreal, it just goes forever.
The Trans-Canada Highway.
Yeah. A 5-hour drive. Yeah, 5.5 hours. Yeah.
Oh man! And so we're driving in the middle of the night, and I'm in the front of the van, and King Diamond's bus is in front of us, and I see this huge 12-point buck just jump onto the road right in front of the bus, and the bus hits it, and it's slow motion spinning over the. I was like, damn! And so we pull over, and the bus was still drivable, but the front was I was like, man, if we would have hit that, that buck with our van, we probably would have died. And then when we had to go back, it was that same road. We were going back to Detroit, I think. And it was November, and it was total crazy blizzard. It was snowing sideways. There were jackknife trucks and cars all up to either side. But we had just but in Montreal, we had hooked up. I was at the hotel and getting breakfast, and I see this one metal dude sitting at the table, and he's looking around. And I was like, are you looking for something? He's like, yeah, I want to be King Diamond. I was like, let me see. So, I knocked on King's door, and he went to go meet him, and they talked, and then I saw him, and it was actually Voivod's tour manager.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, thanks a lot. And he gave me some hash. And I was like, oh, excellent. and I think that morning I actually bought Nothing Face. I think like at the record store before we hit the road. So fortunately, we had Nothing Face and a bunch of hash, and we just cranked Nothing Face through that blizzard, and
That'll do it.
through. So the power of Voivod metal, Canadian metal saw us through.
Yeah,
there you go.
that's wicked.
Cool.
That's cool.
There's cool stuff that happened in Europe too. I wish I could remember. I'm blanking for now. Let's go on to another. If I remember another one, I'll give you one.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. That's awesome. God, these stories are wild to hear.
Oh, dude, that's why so many, you're lucky if you come back alive. We know what happened to Eric Forrest with Voivod. He almost died. He got, pitched out of the band, and another band I knew from the Bronx, Candiria, really good band. Okay. They got in a fucking horrendous accident. I think their singer or the drummer had like 3 or 4 surgeries to recover.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, well, it wasn't with Toxik, but I was playing after Toxik. I played with this thrash band called Black and Sky for a while. Yeah. We made a couple of demos. And the guitar player was actually the brother of Jay Abeni from Wrathchild America.
No,
okay.
Oh, cool.
And so we played a couple shows with them, and we played one show with them out in Virginia. And again, it was another winter show. And when we came out after the show, like the parking lot was like a skating rink. We're like, and we start to go like down the hill to the highway, and I'm turning my steering wheel, and my car's just like going straight, starting to spin. Slide off. Fortunately, went off the road, but fortunately, it was just like like a grassy embankment. It wasn't like a bridge or something, man. See what you risk your life for metal,
Yeah.
It's okay, but if you all got to die sometime, at least it's like, hey, I died on the way back from playing the show. Fuck you. What do you want?
That's a great slogan for a T-shirt.
Hell yeah. Or what? Talk about like fucked up shirts. I used to live in Ohio for a while.
Uh-huh.
I lived in Cleveland, which was actually a great place to live in the 70s. It was awesome. And that show, that Who concert happened where a bunch of people got trampled.
Oh, yeah.
And about a week later, I start seeing some teenagers around Cleveland wearing the shirt saying, I'd walk over you to see the Who.
Oh, my God. That's
very fun. Very fun.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. You ain't kidding. Wow.
We're talking about, I think recently the anniversary for the Ultimate Revenge show happened, at old Studio 54 with Slayer.
Yeah.
And Venom. Yeah. And me and my friends went there, and that was the first time I had ever encountered a mosh pit. And man, me and my friends, we got beat, man. I had my traditional, I had my white Nike high tops, because it was the 80s. When I came out of that show, they were black from being stomped on, man. Especially when Venom hit the stage, it was fucking insane.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that was great. I was right up front I'm in the video for a second, right at the end of Slayer's set. I was like right in front of Jeff Hanneman.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's it. I'll give you a great fucking New York City metal show. I went to go see Possessed at War. And it's fucking amazing. Finish the show, then out of nowhere, Slayer gets on stage, and this is like 3-4 months before Rain and Blood came out, and they played like the whole album.
Wow!
Just
awesome.
Out of nowhere, they just totally unannounced, man. Everyone in that club, like their jaw hit the floor. It was like, oh my God! And then I went up to Carrie,
And you were there on top of that.
Yeah. Oh, dude, man, almost had to change my underwear. It was fucking insane. But the downer, though, I saw Kerry King at the bar afterwards, and I was like, oh, dude, what made you? First, I went to go shake his hand, and he gave me like the limpest handshake ever. He was like, I was like, oh, here we go. I was like, well, why'd you guys decide to play? It was like, bad luck. And I was like, jeez, okay. Pissed in his Cheerios. But I'm actually okay with that. I see, especially like with social media, I don't want to say name names, but some bands, like, hey, this is my house. I'm making pressed mango juice, this morning. It's like, it's not metal.
Yeah.
Don't, metal people are not always nice people. You don't, you can still just be, be a dick sometimes. It's more memorable. Actually, that's not the right thing to say, but
I get what you're saying.
It's too nice. Metal, you're playing this music because you're angry. People don't play metal because they're well adjusted, and everything is good.
Fair enough. So were you kind of an angry lad when you were in Toxik?
If it wasn't for like drums and shit, I would have gone to jail for sure.
Really?
Oh, wow. I caused all kinds of vandalism at my school. I was a scumbag, long-haired stoner, so all the jocks would pick on me. For me, that wasn't the end of it. There was more business, so I'd one time I took like a dead some roadkill or something. I think it was like an old dead squirrels, and put it in this jock's locker who was like hassling me. And then one time we bought there was a hunting supply store near our high school, and they had fox urine there. And I was like, what do you use for fox urine? And the guy's like, and the guy behind the counter is like, yeah, you got to do a perimeter. If you're a hunter, you put it around a perimeter so animals don't smell you. And the guy's like, but man, that stuff stinks. I was like, really? I'll buy this bottle. So I took it back to school and I poured it in like the boiler room, like where the heater was, and it vented out the whole school. And they had to evacuate the school. That's when they tried to send me to jail. But my drum teacher, who was actually my tutor at the time, went in, and pleaded my case. They were like, don't send this kid to reform school. He's got potential. So they did bounce me out of high school, but they sent me to, it was a private school, but it was basically kids who've been thrown out of their respective school. Mm-hmm. So that was a super fucked up place, and it was really close to the Bronx. So it was really easy to get drugs. And, but fortunately, I got more serious with drums. Oh, and I joined this, there was like a cover band called Excalibur. It's like the first band I ever, and they actually rented like a storefront. So after school, I actually had somewhere to go, and I could just play my drums, and that finally got me sort of away from, the path I was on. Okay.
Well, that's a positive story, right?
I'm still a total fuck up, but I try.
Fair enough, dude. Fair enough. Well, we'll go into our next segment, and basically the reason why we brought you on the podcast was to talk about Toxik's first album, World Circus. I'll read just a very brief bio, and you can correct me if I got any of the facts wrong, Tad. So Toxik formed in '85 in Westchester County, New York. You have the classic lineup of yourself on drums, Josh Christian on guitars, Brian Bonini on bass, and then Mike Saunders on vocals. You guys had 2 albums with Roadrunner, World Circus in '87, and then of course Charles Sabin replaced Mike on the '89 album Think This. So, and then of course you broke up in '92, and then the band reformed in 2013. Anything you want to add to that, Tad, before we move on, or?
Oh, yeah, that's all correct.
Okay.
There's Thad back in the day.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. I'm wearing my favorite Dark Angel shirt in there, my We Have Arrived shirt.
Yeah, that new Dark Angel song is getting a lot of heat.
I know, people are hating the vocals.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like Ron Reinhardt though. It's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I worship We Have Arrived and Darkness Descends are 2 of all my favorite metal records. Really, really good. And Gene's a super cool guy. Gene's been over my house.
Oh, cool.
When before Toxik, I used to play with Primeval, like another New York thrash band. Great band. And the bass player Mary was dating Gene Hoglan for a minute. Okay. And surprised me because we practiced at my house. So I'm standing in my kitchen on the phone, and Gene Hoglan fucking walks into my kitchen. I was like, Gene Hoglan? He's like, hey, how you doing? And so immediately I was like, can you sit on my drum chair? He's like, you want me to play your drums? I was like, yeah. He's like, what do you want me to play? I was like, play Black Prophecies. He's like, by myself? I was like, yeah. And so I hit my boombox and I recorded it all. And then Primeval played like a bunch of Slayer songs with him.
Okay.
It was fucking amazing. I was mad at the guitar player in Primeval, though, because he was wearing a Motley Crue shirt. I was like, what the fuck, man? You were cool. Hogan was here. Making me look bad.
That's too much.
That's wicked.
Very good. All right.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
no, go. You can finish your thought. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, my poor parents had to deal with like every band I played in. You know, Primeval practice at my house, Toxic practice at my house. Our neighbors fucking hated us.
I bet.
One night came over, like threatened my dad with a hammer. It's like, my wife just had brain surgery. I can't listen to this shit anymore. My poor parents. I don't think I could work. I couldn't work an 8-hour day and come home to like my whole house shaking. You know, for 2 hours. Man, God bless them. Without my parents, none of this would have happened.
Cool.
And my mom was super, super into it. She used to come to shows all the time.
Oh, cool.
Actually,
okay.
And my mom's in England. My mom's from England. And so when Toxic played the Dynamo Open Air in '88, she actually came over to Holland. And so I told, we asked a couple of, the row crew we had there in Holland. I was like, watch my mom. Watch out for my mom. I don't want her to get crushed in a mosh pit. And they're like, don't worry about it. So they said they went out there with my mom. My mom was like, I want to get closer. They were like, yeah, we should. This is about as close as we should get. And he's like, I want to get closer. And then the pit erupted, and my mom actually lost one of her shoes.
Oh, wow. Oh, shit.
My mom was like, that was awesome.
Oh, cool. Well, she was a good sport about it.
Oh, hell yeah. She came over for Blood Farmers too, and Blood Farmers played Roadburn.
Okay.
And what was super nice is the guy who runs Roadburn, Walter. Mm-hmm. I've known him back at because he wrote for a zine back then. Came to, and so when we booked at Roadburn, I asked Walter. I was like, my mom's coming. Can you recommend a hotel? And he's like, oh yeah, tell her to go here. But it was like the nicest hotel in town. This is where like all the headliners were staying. And I was like, oh man. So I went with my mom to check out, and she was like, what's the bill? And she was like, oh no, it's all paid for. And so that guy Walter, he paid for everything.
Nice.
Dutch people, the Dutch scene, the Dutch culture are awesome, like some of the best people, I've ever dealt with. They're very like easygoing. They're not uptight about anything, but they're also totally professional. But you go to Germany, it's like, okay, lunch is at 4:30 and you're going over here at 8:30, or we are going to murder you and throw you in the streets. It's like, man, so uptight. And there's no
very true.
Blood Farmers we hated Germany. Oh, and there's a great picture too when we were leaving Holland going to Germany. The guy who was our tour manager was like, "Okay, you got to get rid of all the weed now." We're like, "Okay," and so he pulled over at this truck stop. Probably figured we were going to just throw it away. We're like, "Oh no, we're going to smoke all this." And we stood there, like 90 minutes, and he was getting so steamed. We're like, "Dude, we're not throwing this away. Dutch, this is Dutch weed."
Crazy. All right, so
metal is metal
is
metal is so much better in Europe.
Yeah, I know.
It's a shame.
Billy can contest to that because he goes to a lot of festivals.
Oh, cool! Yeah. What festivals do you go to?
So I'll go to like Bloodstock in the UK. I've been to Wacken about 15 times. Oh, I've done Dynamo. I've done just about them all.
Yeah, Dynamo was amazing. I mean, the lineups that guy bought, and I would actually, after being with Toxic, I made a bunch of friends there with our road crew people, and my friend Raymond, he was the stage manager for Dynamo, so I would actually go there and work the stage. I'd get paid, and I worked that one show where Venom and Slayer played the Dynamo. Yeah, so I got to set up like Slayer's amps, and I got to watch Venom sound check.
Nice.
Wow. I played Welcome to Hell like 3 times, and every time was like a complete different tempo. Totally true to Venom.
Yeah, I love the European metal scene, right? Like I'll go to like when I go to Wacken every year, like there's metal bars and they close the streets down and we're out there drinking till 6, 7 a.m. and they're like, people coming from all over the world. I mean, yeah, the German scene and the Europe scene in general, I love it. It's, I'll see bands in small clubs here to maybe 100 people, and then,
Yeah.
you're watching them in Europe with like 80,000 people. It's crazy.
It's terrible. Like a lot of bands from Europe, they can't even really afford to come here because they're going to take a loss. You know, they're like, you are not making money. Whereas when over at Blunt Farmers, not a huge band, but we got paid fair money.
Yeah.
And it sucks, that like bands here in the States and other bands from other countries, like you really can't do it.
Yeah, like we had the German band Rage, who've been around forever. Like they came to Canada for the first time about a year ago, and unfortunately in Toronto they played to 30 people.
Yeah, wow.
This is a band with like over 20 albums that are like, so loved in Europe, and sadly they didn't do well in Canada. That's for sure.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, and they totally skipped the U.S. Like promoters, they couldn't even get any stops in the U.S. It's so sad.
Very disappointing.
Yeah.
At least like where I am in Philly and PA around here has a lot of live shows.
Yeah.
Not just Philly, but there's theaters all over, and a lot of movie stuff too. There's drive-ins that are still operational here. So like, yeah, PA has a good scene.
Yeah, I love that. When I lived in Philly, like I was music everywhere. Yeah, like the suburbs of like Philly, I'd be constantly traveling to see shows in the state. It's amazing.
Yeah, you had the Reverb, and then just in Philly, you got Underground Arts. Yeah, I can't wait on the 29th. I'm going to see Fabio Frizzi.
Okay,
yeah.
Zombie.
Yeah, he's coming to Toronto too.
Awesome. Yeah, he's great live.
Yep. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that show. I'm going to it. I can't wait.
In New York, they had booked it. This guy had booked a horror convention, and he actually had Goblin booked. I think it was like right around like 2000.
Right.
But of course, like the guys from Goblin couldn't get along long enough to come and play the show. So Claudio Simonetti came, with his band, Demonia.
Yeah, Demonia.
It was still pretty good. It was as close as we could get to Goblin, so we were still happy with it. But I love that shit.
Well, Goblin, I think, has been back. They've been touring the last few years. I think the last last 8, 9 years they've been touring. So maybe they got.
I mean, I've got to see them a couple times, but unfortunately, like they can't get along either. You've got like there was 2 versions of Goblin for a while. There was the bassist and the drummer had one, and Claudio Simonetti had it. So it's not really Goblin anymore,
No, it's 2 separate entities almost playing the same music. You're right.
Yeah, it's kind of not quite the thing. But it was cool. I got to see them play House Score. They did a live score to Suspiria.
Oh, nice. That's awesome, dude.
That was amazing. That was really, really cool.
Yeah. I love Goblin. Goblin's awesome.
And that brings me another memory. Like, I don't know if you guys, when Pantera were touring for Power Metal, they opened for us in New York.
Wow.
Okay. That's cool.
Wicked.
And, I remember like it's like, who's opening? It's like Pantera. It's like, isn't she like the side kick singer to Thor or something? That's what I knew Pantera. But man, they sounded amazing, and they were really, really nice too. Especially like Phil, the drummer, and I would see them. I saw them later, maybe like years ago, and they all remembered me. So yeah, I got nothing. I have lots of bad things to say about their music, but personally, they were all very nice.
Nice.
Cool. Very cool.
Well,
all right.
Definitely like.
Sorry, go ahead, Tad.
I was going to go on a negative Pantera rant, but it's going to make you look bad. It's in poor taste now. If those guys were alive, I'd go for it.
Okay, no problem. All right, so we'll go into the album now. So we'll talk about the songs, and then we'll get your impression. Maybe you can tell us things that we don't know about the songs. Like the opening song is "Heart Attack," a song that I totally love. It's such with that, the heart monitor fading, and then the song just blows up. Tell us a little bit about "Heart Attack." What was the impetus behind the song?
Well, basically, I remember I was hanging out with Toxik when they were recording the demo, which was when they did the first version of that. And the original Heartbeat intro was they sampled it from Reanimator on the demo.
Right.
And then we changed it later. But basically, I think it was a song that Josh wrote when he was like younger, and it's basically like hating on his dad. You know, it's got those lines saying like, you know, you daydream all day, waste my money and time. And he's basically wishing that he's so pissed off at his dad, he wants him to drop dead from a heart attack.
Cool.
But when the album was done, I think Josh kind of felt that those lyrics were like kind of juvenile, you know, compared to maybe some of the stuff that we've written since then. And so we didn't include the lyrics on when the record came out. You know, when you pull out the lyric sheet under Heart Attack, it says "Figure it out for yourself, dude," because they didn't want to publish the lyrics.
Oh wow. Oh, that's funny. I don't see why they wouldn't want to, but that's so weird. Different time, I guess, right?
Well, I think you know Josh was definitely concerned with, you know, he definitely wanted it to be, you know, coming across with some, you know, that putting a message across with the music, you know, I think was always something really important to Josh, you know.
Yeah. Well, like the lyrics pretty much are pretty thoughtful on all the songs, at least I think. You know. So.
I really think
Tad's point. Can you guys see this?
No, hold it up.
Oh, yep. Hold on. Yeah, so this is the lyric sheet for the original pressing of the album. Can you
I can
figure
see it.
Figure it out for yourself.
Cool. Oh, that's wicked.
Yeah. Was Josh's, that was his secret shame.
Cool.
And then and that song "Haunted Earth" comes from, we used to go down to the city all the time, and on lower Manhattan on the west side used to be a lot of like shipping docks and stuff and buildings, but it all kind of like gone to seed. And there was this one really like creepy crumbling building, and on the front it said, you know, it was like, "Keep out, Haunted Earth."
Wow.
And we were like, that's cool. So we took that.
Yeah, that's a really good song. I really like that.
Yeah, that
song.
is a wicked track.
Oh, love that song, man. It's got some great like the halftime riffs on there. That's like for me playing in Toxik, like Josh's riffs had incredible grooves. Like I love grooves, you know, especially like growing up like Bill Ward, Les Binks, Kim Rose, all groove players, you know. And like it would be a lot of metal, just kind of like, you know, just like fast, straightforward beats. They get kind of boring after a while, you know. Like me and Josh Shepley, we were big fans of bands like Watchtower, you know, and like Siege is Even, you know, really, you know, because me and Josh, we liked a lot of 70s prog. We loved like Yes and Jethro Tull and King Crimson, and we really wanted to bring that in. It didn't really happen fully, you know, really till like the second record. But, you know, we wanted to bring in, you know, musicianship. We wanted to make it as heavy and thrashing as we could, but, you know, just try and, you know, give it a few curves to make it interesting to play. I think Nasty Savage was doing like the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because they started, you know, a very traditional metal band, but clearly like as they worked on their instruments, they, you know, they wanted to move and do different stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's what really appealed to me about Toxic. Like, really, I mean, I don't know what's the best term, but like that sort of like technical thrash and speed metal, going back from my love of like '70s jazz fusion. But yeah, like bands like Toxic, Watchtower, Realm, Sieges, even as you like, those are all like my favorite albums to this day. I just love like Deception Ignored, by Death Rose, and other like I love that whole technical space. So yeah, that's why when I said before, with you guys with King Diamond, I was there for Toxic.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. You know, when I think about how many amazing records, were made, at the same time, our peers, and have been since then, it's humbling that people remember these records. We certainly never had in mind that anyone would be listening, 30 years later. We were just, we wanted to make the best stuff we could. So it means a lot, especially like for fans like yourself who are looking for something, just a little bit more original. Maybe just, I like weird. I always like the weird bands like Voivod and stuff like that. Or, one of my favorite bands, have you ever heard RKL, Rich Kids on LSD?
I've heard. I think I have, yeah.
They've actually semi-reformed because the singer from Municipal Waste was a huge fan, and he's now got together with like the remaining members, and they're doing some shows.
Oh, cool.
But back in that, like that band, like the chops they had were like in hardcore, music chops are not really required. It's not, you don't need those to get in the door. So I always love bands, or like you ever hear like Raw Power from Italy?
Yep.
Just incredible, chops. It's still like raw as fuck, and there's tons of feedback, but there's, the playing is, as good as it can be,
Mm-hmm.
And you hit it on the head with the album art. I mean, the album art's one thing. So we all grew up in the 80s. We didn't have iTunes and everything else. We had to go in with our allowance money or our money we earned, bought it on the artwork, but the music is what held up for so long because that's what kicks ass. And these albums, you never disappointed back then. You'd pick it up, you named it like War and Pain from Voivod, this album, the next Toxic album, you're buying it, as soon as you have it, you know exactly what you're going to be getting to some degree. But holy shit, like when the first time I picked up some of these albums just based on the artwork and here we are this many years later, still raving, listening to it, rocking out to it. No, It's pretty cool.
And it's real encouraging to me. Like I'll go to shows in Philly and there'll be people my age, but I see people who are like 16, like every demographic, age is in there, and it shows, how much substance there really was.
Oh yeah.
All these great Bay Area bands and, with European bands and it was definitely, it was a real exciting time just to see and hear stuff evolve in real time.
Yeah.
Like you remember that band Living Death? I think they were like a German band.
Yeah, I like that band. Yeah.
Like just like the speeds that they were doing when they first came through, or like Corrosion and Conformity.
Oh yeah, there's a great one. Yeah.
Like Animosity for this first time, man. That blew my mind. Reed Mullen, again, R.I.P. Another one of my favorite drummers. Great. On Blind. Listen, what's that? Like Mind of the Eyes of God, like the hi-hat.
Oh, that's a great album. Yeah, and that song is awesome.
That dude was phenomenal. Yeah, I would definitely say like in my art, like I like as much hardcore as I like metal, and also just like just different weird bands and a lot of soundtracks too. I've always been a huge fan of stuff like Goblin or Ennio Morricone. I love stuff like that, especially like when if I'm making art, if I'm working on a design, any music with lyrics is too distracting. So I have like 6 hours of instrumental stuff.
Cool.
Cool. Well, like on track 2, Social Overlord, I think it's a really good drum track because you pretty much like at the start of it, you're there and it just rips. What's your thoughts on Social Overlord?
That's another, again, it's just a great group. It's got like a great swing. almost like a Bay Area. It could be like an Exodus kind of like swing on that. But like my favorite part was, when it goes to the speed part, it's like, dun, 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 dun. And I would always purposely speed that up, faster than it should be. It's faster. If you listen to the record, it's faster than double time the beat before it. And I just like, fucking with Josh to see how fast he could play that. It's a lot of fun to, that's, I guess, that's sort of what the Toxic stuff lacked later was some of like just those crazy like bursts of youthful, just like force and, and all just doing shit for the first time. And definitely like once we realized, what we had in each other, everyone else in the band, like Mike was a, phenomenal singer and a great front man too. He was really, really good at like connecting with the crowd. If you watch like the Dynamo open shot, he's got like a great rapport with it. He was a natural front man and he hit all of those notes, like, and not even straining too. Like you see like a lot of singers who do, higher stuff, they're hitting it, but they're not hitting it with a lot of force, It's sort of, they're being held up by like compression and levels, but like Mike Sanders, like he barely even needed a microphone. That dude was super powerful.
And very distinctive voice too, especially for that genre of music, Yeah.
No, awesome. He totally had his own thing, and Josh, Josh wrote the lyrics and the phrasing and stuff, but Mike definitely made that stuff his own. Like I can't, we unfortunately, there were people that didn't like Mike's voice, but I feel like if those people would have seen us live, I think that would have totally changed their mind. Because that dude always delivered. Mike's still a good friend of mine. Super nice guy. He lived at my house for a while because most of us lived around like Hudson Valley area, but Mike lived in Jersey and it was like a 2-hour ride. So for a while, he lived with me, so it wasn't, he didn't have to commute so much.
Cool. Yeah. So like I was curious about track 3, Pain and Misery, and I'm bringing it up because the lyrics are about, from what I interpreted, about drug addiction, cocaine. Is that accurate?
Yeah. At that time, like crack came through our area and it was, people who sort of had like some light cocaine habits were selling everything they owned and, ended up on the street. And a good friend of ours, one of Josh's best friend, was going through a really, really bad crack problem, and that song was about him. Okay. Yeah, so that was like a personal friend of ours, who was struggling. Unfortunately, he's good today, and he got through it. And that was just the crime and stuff that erupted around New York from that shit was just horrendous. It was a terrible time. Reagan era Manhattan, man, it was no joke. Yeah, I remember like I moved to Manhattan, I think maybe like 1980. And one time I was on the bus with my parents, and someone threw through the window of the bus. Really? This was like in Midtown Manhattan. Like people don't know how different it is now. Now it's like Disneyland for millennials. Yeah. It was a different scene back then. Yeah. But you know what? It was really exciting. Yeah, really exciting. And I was scared too because we had moved there from Cleveland, and it was first like I'm looking around, I was like, there's graffiti all over that building there. I was like, what is this fucking Welcome Back, Kotter? I don't know if this is like safe to live here. But then I went downtown, around like the Village and stuff, and saw like the comic book stores and the record store. I was like, oh, no, this is okay. I'll take my chances.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hell yeah.
So okay, Voices is an interesting song. Give us your thoughts about it? Because it's like a lot of like lyrically. I mean, I'm the lyric guy, so in our little group here, I always like talk about lyrics. So I get out of it like there's mental conflict. You're fighting your demons. What was the thought behind the lyrics to the song?
Yeah, I never like had any discussions I can remember with Josh about the lyrics, unfortunately. But I would say like music wise, voices is really one of my favorite songs on the record. I think it's the most original
I
song.
like.
I remember when we wrote that, I was like, this doesn't sound like anything else.
Yeah.
And I really like the guitar solo part because Josh just let, he was just his solo and the bass instead of having like another rhythm guitar. And I love that. Like, I love the way that sounds because Brian, incredible bass player. He did some really great, tasteful stuff. And it's great that he, got a chance to shine on that, and I love that. I love that groove. It's such a weird groove, that riff that, it's kind of like it doesn't really have like a downbeat, like when I'm coming down, it's kind of like on its own. Like Josh's riff kind of like dances around, the beats on there. It's just like a brilliant way. I love that song. My favorite song, my favorite track on the record would be Door to Hell.
Yeah,
overall.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's mine.
Man, I mean, like riff after riff, like towards the end, it almost sounds like Inspector Gadget towards the end.
Yes.
I mean, when we played that for Gene Hoglan, he was like, "That's dope." He was like, "That riff was fucking killer." Oh, and what was great too? Gene Hoglan, before I was in Toxik, they had another drummer for a while, who played on the demo. And that was over at Josh's house. And they had a couple of couches in Josh's basement, and some of like the legs were missing from the couch. So they put like a tub of like caulking cement or something to hold it up. And after Gene Hoglan sat down on one of the couches, it like exploded like all over the floor. Okay, Gene's in perfect shape now. He was a big boy back then. But it was great though. Me and Josh took him around. We're like, we're gonna take you around Peekskill. He was like, what's around Peekskill? I was like, we can take you to the chili dog place. He was like, all right, let's go. If you look on the thanks on Darkness Descends, Gene writes, thanks to Tad and Josh for the chili dog tour.
Oh, cool.
Nice. Nice.
Super cool
That's
guy.
awesome.
Super cool guy, man. He was a good friend of mine. And also, what was great, I become friends with Chuck Schuldiner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we all love Death. Yeah.
I was on vacation with a friend of mine in Tampa, and I bought lots of zines back then, and back then you could just like got a hold of someone at the zine who did an interview with Chuck. It was like, hey, I'm in Florida. Do you have Chuck's number? He was like, sure, here you go. Something you could never do today.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, here's his phone number. And so I just cold called him. He was like, yeah, dude, why don't you come over? And so it was just him and Chris Reifer. This was before, right after they did the Mutilation demo.
Okay.
And so me and my friend Steve, we got a private death show in Chuck's garage.
Wicked.
They were like, all right, what do you want to hear? We're like, Beyond the Unholy Grave.
Yeah.
It was heaven. We hung out a bunch of times. And so that was like 86.
Okay.
And then so 87, I got back in touch with Chuck. I was like, dude, I'm coming back to Florida because we're going to Morrisound. So Chuck came out, to hang with us at the shitty motel we were at in Tampa. And then we hung out the second time too. When we did Think This, I actually went back and stayed at Chuck's house for a while.
Oh,
and
cool.
we jammed in the garage, and he showed me how to play Melissa by Merciful Fate.
Oh wow.
Oh, nice.
On guitar.
Oh, sweet.
Chuck, really good. He was a super cool guy, man. Awesome guy. Miss that guy. It's a shame.
Yeah.
I hope somehow he knows how much, he's given, and especially bringing death metal forward into something more expansive and, progressive. Definitely the world owes him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Tad, question for you, if I could. Just as a musician, I'm just curious to your thoughts on death. So you kind of have like Terry Butler kind of touring with, like his one band doing death tribute. And then you have the other guys with Death to All doing it. I mean, I personally enjoyed the shows. Like, I think they did a good job paying tribute to death. But like, any thoughts on that? Like, do you think that's a good thing? Or a bad thing when you have these tribute things to people who are no longer with us?
Yes, so it's a fine line. I've never seen Death to All, but I'm sure they're they're solid at what they do. But I have seen. I went to go because I still talk to Terry Butler, still a friend of mine. But I went to go see him and Rick Ross play Left to Die, they were fucking incredible.
Yeah.
They played, like I like the older Death. I like Scream Bloody Gore, and that's like I love Human. I like the product stuff, but maybe it's just because the time when I came into it, that's when I knew Chuck. That's my favorite shit, and they play all of those.
Yeah.
And I really got into that show. I really enjoyed it. Questionable. I guess it is still a good thing because people love that music so much, and it's even if the money may not be going to Chuck's family, I'm not sure if it is. I think maybe it should be, but it's a celebration to Chuck, and it just emphasizes how incredible, how important what he did was, and how it's still so relevant now, and everyone still enjoys it, whether it's the prog end of Death or the more brutal, early stuff. It's all still, people still, get so much out of it.
Yeah, well said. And it's good for the young guys, right? Like, who never got to see Death back in the day. So at least they get to experience, many of the members playing tribute to that music. So it spreads the word, which has got to be good from Chuck's legacy and having the music spread more.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. And I mean, even when Death were still active, they weren't really breaking out, Scream Bloody Gore stuff after a while. Once they get onto, like a Symbolic or something like that, it was mostly, which a lot of bands do too. Boybot did that too. They weren't really playing War and Pain anymore. And, I guess you got to understand it. These people have been playing these songs forever, and they're sick of them and probably think their new material is so much better. But, that's like, so even when Death was still around, they weren't playing all that stuff. So it's great to hear it, so even back in the day, you weren't guaranteed, you weren't going to hear, what's my favorite one? What's that song? A hook right through your tits. Torn to Pieces.
Yeah, that's a good song.
Worship that song. And Chuck was like, I think he was the first person who showed me one of those Italian cannibal movies, because in America it was called Make Them Die Slowly. They were like, you got to see this. I was like, oh man, that was rough. And then you got I love horror, but I hate the animal stuff and all the cannibal movies. Yeah. It's because those Mondo movies were really hot at the time. We're like, all right, let's find an anaconda and make it eat something. It's like, oh.
Well, the director was in court over the cannibal Holocaust because he actually killed animals in the movie, which is kind of.
Oh, yeah. I got to talk to Diodato a couple of times because I did all the packaging for Cannibal Holocaust. I got to meet the people in that movie, and he said, he regrets it now. Yeah. And he said he was just like super angry. He had just gone through a terrible divorce, and but the other actors were terrified.
I bet they were.
I can imagine.
I don't know if this guy's going to be satisfied just killing monkeys, Might have to make a quick escape out of here. Like the one guy said he always had his passport on him, so he was going to flee the set at any time. But I love how fucked up and dangerous that is, though. Like you're going to a place that's totally inhospitable and dangerous. There's shit that can kill you everywhere. And, I think that's a brilliant movie, though.
Yeah, I like that movie.
I love going to screenings of it too, because you'll hear these hipsters in the beginning, kind of like cracking some jokes. I was like, wait till they pull the sea turtle out of the fucking river, and I'll see how much you're cracking jokes then, son.
Yeah, you won't be cracking any jokes.
Boys. Actually, where do I have it? Somewhere Grindhouse got me this awesome little styrofoam turtle. It's like this happy looking turtle, but it's got the Cannibal Holocaust logo on it.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's a great movie. I like that movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's a classic film.
It's a feel bad movie for sure.
Oh yeah, because everyone goes there and dies and gets eaten to death. I mean, pretty much. That's the story. And it's like one of the first found footage films on top of that.
Exactly, but long before Blair Witch and stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's why Diodato got pulled into court, because they purposely would scratch the film, like the sound goes in and out. So within 10 minutes, you're buying that's a real thing,
Yeah, crazy. Oh, wow. All right,
well,
so
I'm obsessed with that. Yeah. So let's move on to Toxik. Okay.
Yeah. So like track 6, World Circus. I like this song a lot, and I'm sure
it's a wicked one.
Jim will have something to say about it. But what's your thoughts on it, Tad?
It's well, I don't know if Josh will probably get mad because I'm giving it away, but the root of World Circus is He's a Woman, She's a Man by Scorpions.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And we used to play that all the time. Like, me and Josh are huge Scorpions fans, huge. And so it kind of stemmed from that. And so I always loved that, and it's a great, it's an awesome song to play. Again, like, it's got another one of one of his best halftimes riff, where it's just like after the fast beat. It's a wicked song to play, and definitely people, the fans seem to be like one of the songs they like the most. Got the most reactions from World Circus.
I could see that. Billy, you have any thoughts on it? You want to ask Tad about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a big fan of the song, right? Like, I love the way Josh sort of did that circus theme into the
yeah.
Pretty cool, right? So, I mean, that, but also I think I love Josh's solo, like in between the 2 and 3 minute mark, right? Like, I don't know if he was interested in like Marty Freeman or Jason Becker or the early like Cacophony stuff, but that's the one solo on this album where he's kind of playing like Jason and Marty is to my ears.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he had the copy, and I think he had like the Racer X records too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
because that solo is very structured like that. It's different than a lot of the other songs on the album.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think that was maybe World Circus was maybe sort of like halfway through that batch of songwriting. Songs like False Prophets and stuff, that was older stuff, still back from the demo. But then I think when we were recording World Circus, I think Door to Hell was like brand new. I think we were still finishing like the lyrics when we were in there. That was the last song, and World Circus was later on too. So yeah, Josh had really like found his his niche there. And yeah, I know definitely Josh, he was a huge Alan Holdsworth fan.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, he was a really big one for and you can definitely I hear a lot of Alan Holdsworth and Chewy from Voivod too.
Oh, for sure.
He does a lot of licks. I'm like, oh man, that could be Josh. It's like that same source.
Cool.
But personally though, like, I really hated all the Guitar Hero stuff that happened in all the Shrapnel Records stuff.
Shrapnel, yeah.
Because I felt like, it was just only about the guitar. They wouldn't put any effort into whatever the drums were or whatever. It's like Yngwie Malmsteen, like amazing solos, but he can't, guy could barely write a song, can't write anything memorable, and that's how I felt like the Tony McAlpine and these Guitar Heroes. Like, it was impressive, but the overall package of the music I thought was shallow, because it was one-dimensional to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? The songs maybe came second, and the like showing what they can do often came first.
Yeah, I mean, and I know, and there's a place for that, but it's definitely like, when I go to concerts, I'm not psyched to hear the drum solo or the guitar solo. I don't care. To me, that's totally boring. I like songs.
Fair enough.
Good point.
Well,
but I can't play guitar like Josh Christian. If I did, I might want to show it off a little more and do some more wanking.
Well, tell us about track 7, because I think that's kind of the most interesting track. 47 Seconds of Sanity. Count Your Blessings. What was the thought process with that?
Yeah, that was that was one of my favorite things that Josh did. It's an amazing, to transfer what he does to an acoustic and in such a tasteful way. Like, I mean, there's fast scales, but there's really, like the little harmonics and stuff that he does. Like, there's so much heart in that. And the one thing that I really liked is when we were down there, we were renting, guitars here and there for what we needed for different tracks. And so we rented, like a really nice, like Martin acoustic and something else, but it didn't record that well. And I had my crappy acoustic there, just like this round back thing. And they tried it, and that sounded better than all these like really expensive ones. And that it was my guitar that's on 47 Seconds.
Cool. Cool. Okay.
So, I mean, and I love Count Your Blessings, going into that. That's, the vocal lines, Mike's performance on that is, again, it's so real. It's got so much heart behind it. I feel like it expresses the angst of the lyrics. Definitely, like in New York City, you would see homeless veterans all the time, and it's, it's rough to see. People they're not taken care of.
Well, the song definitely reflects some of that for sure, at least in the lyrics, at least what I find with it. But
yeah,
Jim, do you have any thoughts about the song, Jim?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's wicked. I love how, like, in the second part where it just rips right in with the guitar and drum mix is just phenomenal. And I mean, it's such a cool song on the album. Probably, I agree, it's one of the most diverse songs on the album. I absolutely love it. And I mean, it just takes up, and there's an amazing guitar solo in it. I mean, this is definitely, it's just a killer track. And I love how it starts off. It's like two tracks in one, and then it just, around the 50 seconds, it just rips right in. I love it. Absolutely love it.
I feel like it all makes sense.
I
think it's all you could tell that's a part of where it's going. And I love the riff behind, like the solo, and like Josh was actually like a really good drummer. Like, you have like a lot of guitar players who have technical abilities and they can write some riff, but they don't have like a sense of like rhythm. Like writing an odd time groove or something like that.
Right.
A lot of people like it's just straight through 4/4, and you kind of leave it up to the drummer to try and structure that and make it interesting. But Josh would always have these amazing like angular structures for me to work with, which were challenging. They were definitely, took me a while to get right and stuff. But it just, what Josh was setting up was so motivating for me, and I think everyone else, like we just, we loved playing these parts, and we ended up, complimenting each other, perhaps not even intentionally. It just worked out. Those solos, it just happened to, it's one of those magic times where it works, and it's beautiful when that happens. The whole recording of World Circus was just like a super, up and positive time, and we weren't supposed to work with Tom Morris. Originally, we were going to work with Dan. Was his name Dan Johnson? Because they like the Crimson Glory records.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I forget what his last name was, and we were originally set up to work with him, but like Roadrunner sent him the demo. He was like, this isn't really what I do. It was like, work with Tom Morris. And it was the best thing that ever happened, because Tom Morris completely understood what we were doing. He completely got it. Him and Josh were totally working, in a symbiotic way. It was, we couldn't have had a better, person, realize this music. If it wasn't for Tom Morris, I don't think it would have come out as well, and it wouldn't have sounded like us, as accurately, probably, if we had gone to like Pyramid Sound up in Ithaca, which is where a lot of bands like Anthrax and Overkill were going up there. And we could have gone that. It would have been cheaper and easier to stay in New York. But, I'm really glad we went down there. Although, man, I did not love Tampa too much, man. Nothing to do. It's just like dirty old strip malls, crappy fast food restaurants, like there was one movie theater, and actually when Chuck came to hang out, we went over there to go see The Hidden.
Oh, well, I love that movie. Yeah, great movie. Jack Shoulder.
That's a really underrated movie.
Yep.
And he'd already seen it. He was like, dude, I just seen it. He was like, let's go see it again. I was like, hell yeah.
Nice.
But that was the only time I ever had fun in Tampa.
Hey, at least you saw a good horror movie.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, and there's now, I think, Morrisound is not in the same location anymore, but there's now like a marker where they were, because so many, more death metal albums, Obituary and stuff like that. So it's now like there's like a monument, to everything that happened there. I wish I'd taken more pictures there. I must have smoked like 100 joints in the parking lot of Morrisound Studios. out in the van, in like Tampa, like 90-degree heat, just about to pass. I was like, oh no, one more bowl before we go in. And I'll tell you a quick funny story too. When you come into Morrisound, they would have a row of records that have been recorded there. It was like Steve Morse had done a record there, but then on the side was this little cassette demo, and I was like, what's that? And it was the Iced Earth demo.
Oh.
So obviously that guy John Shaver has such a big ego. He's like, could you put my demo up next to the Steve Morse record over here? But then later on, I was in the lounge there. They had like some video games, and John Shaver came in and he was talking to somebody else, and all of a sudden I heard him say like, man, yeah, we're going to be bigger than Kiss. And I laughed out loud. I couldn't even help myself. And he shot me this look. I was like, dude, what are you fucking kidding yourself? Mr. MAGA. You see that picture of him storming the Capitol?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. He's all over the internet for a long time.
Yeah.
I hope his career is ruined forever.
Yeah.
He probably won't get another record deal.
No, that's for sure.
I don't know. There's probably some MAGA people have some money.
It's true. So we'll go to. I know you mentioned Haunted Earth earlier, so I like that song a lot too.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, that's a good song. So what's your thoughts on that, Tad?
Yeah, I feel like that song almost really has almost like a hardcore punk kind of vibes.
Okay.
It's got that kind of like steady groove. So I love those kind of grooves, and I also like the it's sort of like in a 3 groove. There's like it's like dun, 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 dun. Like those grooves are amazing. I love playing those, and the little breaks and dun, 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 those are just super fun to play. That's definitely like one of my favorites, and I feel like that's a very like New York kind of sound. There's certain bands I felt that really pick up like the grit of New York bands like Demolition Hammer, and Overkill. That you could feel like the concrete, in those songs. Like I love that kind of style.
Cool. Billy, what's your thoughts on the song?
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I mean, I think the album closes incredibly strong, right? Like False Prophets, Haunted Earth, and
Victims.
Into my favorite, one of my, I've said it before on this channel. We talked about Rain and Blood, we talked about Master of Puppets, having these awesome like opening and closing tracks, and for me, like I find this is an album up there for like opening and closing tracks. So I guess I'm getting a bit off topic of that song, but yeah, for me, I love the last 3 tracks, and Tad like really he's blistering on these final 3 tracks, like especially Victims, just like beating the shit out of that kid. I'm sure. I love that closing track.
That snare roll was cramp inducing.
And
like.
Oh yeah, I mean, and Victims, like what a bookend of a great album. Like, you can measure good albums by how it starts and how it finishes, man, and it's just wicked. I mean, the bass on Victims, it's just this song is an all-out assault. It's like nothing's left. We're just gonna jump. We're going for it. We're going for it, and man, it's absolutely wicked. I love it.
I really, really appreciate that, man. I love, that's like definitely like the fastest, most aggressive song.
Oh yeah,
it's always fun to play. Although I disagreed with Josh on the lyrics, because he's sort of coming out against Faces of Death and so which I guess I agree in some ways. Like, I don't like watching people or animals die for real at all. That's not entertainment to me. So I agree with that. But at the same time, if you want to watch that, you should be able to. If that's what's entertaining, because I know what I like. A lot of people think is absolutely sick and demented. So like, I understand if people are looking at me that way, when I'm looking at people, you look at people watching Faces of Death, like, oh, you might have some problems, but if you want to watch someone dive off a building or get eaten by an alligator, I think as American or whatever, you have a right to do that. In England, all that shit got banned. They couldn't even see a lot of those movies for years.
Well, don't forget, Faces of Death lived off that reputation that it was all real, when really at the end it was all mostly staged. Most of it wasn't all.
Yeah, I was really thankful to find out that monkey brain eating scene was not real, because that traumatized me for a while. Yeah. That was rough.
Yeah, I could see that. So I just reading between the lines, was that something that was inspiration for the song though, for Victims? Or because I was kind of, when you're talking, you mentioned it, I'm like, did Josh, like, was it inspired by that, by watching that?
I think, no, I see it's more, it's a wider view of that, plus like the talk shows, that were starting to pop up around there, all the Geraldo, like really sensational type of salacious stuff, which was, usually just all like hype and stuff like that. And it's funny how, like, you talk about that and, racist and Nazis on these shows, and like, now it's exactly the same thing, just like turned up even more. Like, no one has tried to curb that shit. No one has changed their minds. If anything, it's like more people are on that trip, and it's it's a sad thing that, like, 35 years ago we're like, man, this is a problem, and no one, not enough people saw that as a problem.
Yeah.
And it's, but it was, it's important, it's important to address, I think.
Yeah. Fair enough.
It's definitely relevant.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's pretty much the album. There's 10 songs. Billy, do you have any final thoughts before we move into the last segment?
No, I just an interesting observation. So anyone who's a fan of, and we did a podcast on this, so Heathen Victims Deception album. So I'm not going to say I would never imply that they copied, but go to 47 Seconds of Sanity, go to the 50-second mark and listen to the playing of that song. And it's almost 100% identical to a riff that you're going to hear on Victims of Deception. Like, it's almost like a complete copy. Like, I was getting ready for the podcast and playing the album, and I know this album very well, but it just kept bugging me. Like, where do I know this? Like, this riff, like, or this whole, like, it's a 15-second music section. And then it just hit me, right? Like, this is like exactly what's on Victims of Deception. So I know you guys are, Jim and Ken, a big fan. So I dare you, go back to the 50-second mark and play that, and tell me you're not going to immediately. And obviously, the Toxik came before. So somebody was influenced by something there.
Well, that's definitely an honor. I thought Heathen were a great band. I love Breaking the Silence. And actually, after World Circus, we talked to Dave, who was the singer, Heathen at the time, about maybe joining Toxik.
Oh,
And
really?
I thought it would have been a really, really good move. I was actually more in favor of him than Charlie.
right.
Yeah, I gotta take a minute to dunk on Charlie. It's like Charles Sabin, or Charlie, as we know, he was, a dude we knew in high school, but he was always like in the hair crowd, like Kicks, and he was not a heavy guy, and like none of us really liked him personally either, because he was kind of a cokehead, narcissist asshole. And I was like, no, my vote is no. But I was outvoted, and he came in, and I was disappointed.
What was it? Why didn't Mike return? Like, what was the reason for that?
Yes, the problem we got called into it. There he is. Look at that hair. Lots of bad choices were made. Some of mine were bad too.
So Mike, so you guys. So they got rid of Mike, or
so Roadrunner called us in, minus Mike, for a meeting, and they're like, we don't like Mike's vocals at all, and unless you get another singer for Think This, or like we're gonna cut your budget in half.
Okay.
And we're like, well, okay. So we went back to Mike, but Mike, we were all good friends. We're like, it's like, if you want to stay, we're behind you. We're not, we're not going to throw you under the bus because of, because of this bullshit. But he decided, like, at the point, Mike had been like living in like the basement of my parents' house for like a year or so. And, there was other stuff he wanted to do, so we sort of like amicably, parted ways. It was a shame. And it sucks that Roadrunner didn't appreciate him, but because I think he did a killer job.
Yeah, I like Mike's vocals on the first album.
So do I.
I thought they were great.
Yeah.
But, of course, like as the label, Roadrunner was like, you need to get your vocals. You need someone like Testament, or Metallica. We're like, well, it's not what we're trying to do. It's like nothing against those bands, but, we're Toxic. So, but that's the kind of stuff you got to deal with labels, They're trying to make money, that they don't care about your artistic aspirations.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, it's all about them making the money, not you.
Yeah.
When you think about
it.
Yes,
and they certainly have probably made quite a bit now, because I think all these, both these records have been reissued like 6-7 times, and we don't see that money. We get a couple of free copies, but so Roadrunner is collecting on all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame.
That's a shame.
But again,
it is.
But you know what? Like at the same time, though, I had a lot of friends, who worked really hard, or like Jason Bittner, drummer for Overkill and Category 7 and stuff. Amazing Shadows Fall, amazing drummer, a good friend of mine. That dude worked, and just nothing was working. None of his bands were getting signed. And he was at the point where like, yeah, maybe I need to get a straight job. And then fortunately, Shadows Fall came along.
Yeah,
and that's like it's tough, and it's tough to make a choice. Like especially like if you have a family, and it's tough, man.
Well, what sucks about Shadows Fall is they all pretty much put a lot of really good records out, but then all had to kind of go into other bands to make a living, which really
and that's the thing, like if you could be in a national band now, but you're not going to make enough to make a living. You're going to have to go do something over at, you're going to have to do a session at the drum. You have to do a session. You have to do some lessons. Paul Bostaff, probably looks like he's given lessons before every Slayer show, and like, God, man, how much do you get paid for a Slayer show? And you still got to give lessons on top of that. It's terrible, because you work so hard to play as fast as you thrash drummers do. You got to practice like hours and hours a day, and then when you're seeing, there's nothing, you can't support yourself.
Yeah,
it's tough, and that's why I went back to school, and like I love making music with my friends and stuff like that, and I'll never stop doing it because I love metal and I'll live for it. But like being in a working band is just, it's tough. It's really, it's not for everybody.
Well, you've had an art career for quite a while now. How's it going with the art career?
It's really, I've gotten to work on so many of my favorite movies. I've been working for Grindhouse Releasing for about 20 years now. So, I just did a huge box set for The Beyond. By Lucio Fulci, which is kind of like the holy grail of Italian horror. So,
absolutely.
Grindhouse put out this incredible, it's probably going to be the most comprehensive release that's going to come out. It's because when Beyond came out in America, it was 7 Doors of Death. There's the version of that. And then you got separate discs of soundtrack. And for the package, we recreated the book of Ebon. It was like a book of the dead. And so, that was like a really challenging thing to work on. But to be involved with stuff like that is awesome, and I'm getting to know, Bob Murawski, who is an Academy Award winning editor. He got an Academy Award for The Hurt Locker, but he loves fucked up horror movies.
Well, Grindhouse Releasing, dude, there's a lot of really fucked up movies there.
Oh, for sure. And and they were really, like Sage Stallone, Bob, and also William Lustig, who started Blue Underground, who I also do all the graphic design for Blue Underground too.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, I've been working for them about 4 years now.
Okay.
And before these guys, if you wanted some, European horror movie, you'd have to pay $30 for a dark VHS dub, but like these guys actually went to all around the world, found the original negatives, and now that's one of the hottest home video sellers now. Italian horror is super hot, They're kind of getting to the bottom of the well almost at this point.
True.
But I'm a huge fan. Like actually, and going way back, the first record I actually worked on was a compilation. It was called Raging Death.
Okay.
And it was the first release. It was a compilation album that had the first release from Sadis. It had Obituary before they were called Obituary. They were called Ravage.
Okay.
And I actually hand drew the cover for that.
Oh, nice.
I was friends with this guy, Boy Kurgan. He's the guy who runs Blabbermouth now.
Oh, Blabbermouth. Okay, yeah.
He had a great zine back in the 80s called Violent Noise. And we used to talk all the time, and he was like, "Oh, you want to draw the cover for this?" I was like, "Oh, hell yeah!" I was a lazy stoner, so it took me like forever to make it, but and now that's like it's like a real like collectible album now. So it's
if they can find it, good luck.
And that's my whole thing, like why I get involved in art and music to begin with, is because I love this stuff so much. Like I want to be involved with these bands. I want to meet the guys from Artillery. I want to, I want to hang out and smoke weed with Pentagram, and that's the whole, this stuff has been so important to me in my life. Like I can't imagine, like I never could have gotten through high school and shit like that without metal, without the underground scene and all the great friends that I made, and I still have, after all these years. So it's, it's a great thing.
Well, I think it's great. Like I know on Facebook, I see all the stuff you post. Like you're into comic books, you like horror films, heavy metal, all the things that are right up my alley. So it's like it's great. Like that's why I wanted to get you on the podcast, talk about Toxik, and then talk about the stuff you're doing, because it's, as an artist, it's not, I like hearing these kinds of stories. What you're doing nowadays.
Oh, it's a pleasure to to be on. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and like we obviously have like a lot of common ground on what we've come up on, which is cool because we're sort of a dying breed, like there's only so many of us who were like doing this shit back in the 80s and still give a shit about it now, and still talking about it, and it's important. We got to impart these stories on, because they're important,
Yeah. Absolutely agree with you. That's why we started Thrashcast, to talk about our favorite thrash albums growing up, because we're all a certain vintage of age, and so we all grew up with this stuff, and like yourself. So it's great.
Let's knock on wood. We still have a few decades left.
Yes.
No. I wasn't stating that.
I know.
Oh yeah, I'm not. I'll just I might be meeting the Grim Reaper sooner than these millennials, but I saw all the dope shows.
Yeah.
So, if someone laid that choice in front of me, it's like, no, I'm going to go see those shows. It's okay.
Gotcha.
And then, and there was a bar that had to be cleared back in the day. You couldn't just like log on and say, "Oh, I love this new book. I know everything about metal." You'd have to like get to the record store, if you lived in a remote area, you had to write some letters, and just that was the price of entry. And now you don't have that. No. And you grow up when you grow up, but I feel like it took extra effort, to be in. You had to make a commitment. So I think it sort of like anyone who was sort of half interested, didn't stay with it.
Right. It was more special. It was way more special because you had to do it. The magazines, if you saw it, you barely saw video. And videos came out later, and I mean, it was like I love going to the record store and just seeing a new band and going like, I want to listen to this. The gorier, the bloodier, the more satanic. This is what I want to listen to.
And and I made great friends. Some of my best friends. I'd be flipping through records that were like, "Oh, black metal by Venom. Have you heard Voivod?" That's when it happens that way, and you find like another band that like changes your life, then that person has a important part of your life.
Oh yeah,
like that person. That's the mailman that delivered you. Like a path that you're gonna. I've been on since War and Pain. I've listened to every Voivod record, and and music like that. And I would definitely say like an album like War and Pain. When you listen to that, it's a world. You're going into a world that you can really. It's a soundscape.
Yeah.
Which goes back to like Black Sabbath. So Black Sabbath, like musicianship was strong, but it was what they built. Like you could see things through the audio that you're making. And I think to me, that's the music that's what moves me the most. If it's making me picture an entire landscape, and a world, then you've really achieved something. Whether it doesn't matter what your musical skill is. If you can create that's something that generations will appreciate.
Well said. Yeah,
exactly. All right, so we have our final segment. I know we were talking about this before. We're all going to pick our 5 favorite 80s horror films. And Tad, since you are the guest of honor, why don't you start us off with your 5 favorites?
All right. Oh man, it's a hard one.
I know.
Where I'll bring up this one because it's interesting, because I know I kind of dunked on Blood Incantation Brum, but I kind of like that record. Have you heard Absolute Elsewhere?
Yep. I like it. Love it.
And it's got this long sample. I think maybe on like the second song, I'll talk about like, oh, well, you think our planet isn't the only one, and there's multiple universes. And I was watching one of my favorite movies called Contamination.
Yep,
it's a Thai movie. Like they tried to capitalize on Alien.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like these eggs, and when they explode on people, their guts blow out. Like it's some of the awesome practical effects. But I'm watching this movie, and this guy goes into the speech, and we're like, oh, there's, you think our planet isn't the only one. I was like, holy shit, that's the sample from the Blood Incantation. Yep. And so I put it online. I was like, where's my prize? Give me a free shirt, man. How many other people figured this out? I was very proud of myself. So that's a big one. And I would definitely, it was called Gates of Hell.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah. America. Yep. That shit, man, when I rented that movie, that was like, I'd never seen a movie that was just pure nightmare logic. There's no regular narrative. Nothing really makes sense. So it's so terrifying. But you feel like that's how the supernatural is going to function. It's not going to be in something you can understand, So this priest showing up and making people vomit out their guts was just like, man. So good stuff. I would say Maniac by William Lustig.
Yep.
Really disturbingly intense.
Very disturbing.
And some great Tom Savini gore.
Mm-hmm. Good pick.
And then Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
It's a big one. Yeah, actually, we was like me and my best friend Steve from Brooklyn, the guy who put me on to like Voivod and stuff. I can still remember we got together at his house and like we didn't have much weed, so we had to go through all our roach collections. So we like broke up like all our roaches and finally got enough and got super high and went to go see Day of the Dead in Brooklyn. And it was just like it was everything I would hope it would be, because the gore is so great and it's such like a I like. Like I'm definitely like a misanthropic person. I don't feel great things about humanity, and I like how Romero turns on that even when, there's only a few survivors left and you should be all helping each other, everyone's still a scumbag, to the point where you're fucking each other over until, the zombies overrun you, and I think that just like, it says a lot, It's got something about humanity.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I always preferred Dawn, but Day of the Dead is.
But Dawn is my favorite, but I can't include that because it's 70s.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Rolled out. Like I would include Zombie by Fulci, but I think that's 79.
79, yeah, it's not quite 80. That's right.
Yeah.
I got
you.
I'm
trying to think. And then of course, The Beyond, and what else was I'm trying to think. Return of the Living Dead.
Yes, great movie.
So kick ass. I mean, like that's probably like the most entertaining like midnight movie. Like you can have friends over who aren't even really into horror, but that movie has so much great humor and action.
Yep.
And the effects are amazing.
Yeah, I love the Tarman. The Tarman's awesome.
Oh, Tarman's great, man. That director Dan O'Bannon, really like underrated guy. He never really did well in Hollywood. I heard he was kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard similar stories as well.
Someone said, I think like one of the actresses from that movie was over at his house or something, and she came to his house and there was like porn on the TV and like a loaded gun like on next to it. She's like, I'm not really comfortable working with this
guy. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So that was
all
5.
Right, so that was 5, right?
Perfect. Yeah, that was 5. Cool. That's a good pick. Your last pick is good. That's a great movie. I love that movie. Linnea Quigley being eaten by zombies. Whew. What a great scene!
Yeah.
Remember that scene?
She's and like, have you seen the extras in that? Because she gets naked.
Yes, yes.
And I guess like they filmed the naked scene, and the producer was like, "You can't show this. You can see her bush and everything." And they're like, "Okay." So his solution was to shave her and like shoot it again. And the producer's like, "No, this is even worse." So they had to put like a fake like cod piece like over her crotch to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's great. That's funny.
Back on the horror trip, I was really good friends with Vinny, the drummer from Demolition Hammer. R.I.P. Amazing drummer. He was a huge horror fan, and we used to go to like Fangoria conventions and stuff out there, man. Yeah, look. He was a huge horror fan, man. We were buzzed. We were like such best friends that like even our girlfriends like became like best friends. We were like total like partners in crime. That guy was great. Awesome guy. I'm glad that Hammer's back together too and totally like kicking ass again.
Yep. Hammer's returned. And then Fango's back. Fangoria is back again as well. So
Oh yeah, and managing editor for Fangoria, Mike Gingold, is old friend of mine. He lived like 10 minutes away from me in New York.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, but what is he doing now? I think he's working for Rue Morgue, I believe.
He's doing some stuff for Rue Morgue also, and he's also doing a lot of contributions to DVDs. Like I've worked on some movies where he's doing the commentary.
And Delirium, isn't he also working for Delirium magazine?
Yeah. Delirium is a great mag.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I used to write for Fangoria back in the day when it was.
Oh, really?
When Chris Alexander was the editor here in Canada.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've never met Chris, but he seems like a really cool guy.
Chris is a great guy. He's pretty much editor of Delirium. So if you ever run into anyone from Delirium, you could run into Chris. He's a great guy.
Oh yeah, well I designed a lot of ads, a lot of full page ads for Delirium for like Blue Underground. stuff like that. Yeah, no, he's a cool guy.
Cool. Awesome. All right, Jim, how about yourself? What do you got?
Yeah, I only know 2 of those movies, but I got to admit, Night of the Living Dead, I must have rented that and rewound and paused that a million times as a young man.
First time around, man, I saw a midnight show of like Night of the Living Dead. Man, that's a scary movie for the first time, especially like in the theater. Yeah, that's no joke, man. That's a powerful movie.
Yeah. Mine are a little bit more commercial and a little bit more kind of funnier, more. I like the Ghoulies. I like Ghoulies too. I'm going by soundtrack too, with the Wasp doing "Scream Until You Like It," but that was kind of cool. I like those movies.
Right?
That franchise and like the Puppet Master franchise were kind of cool. As they went on. One of my favorites, Terror Train with Jamie Lee Curtis. Love that one from 1980.
Yeah, I like how the killer keeps using different disguises, so you don't know. Yeah, no, that's actually a solid thriller.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And I love it, the fact they had some sort of phone, but they were going through kind of a dark territory. And it was back then they couldn't just pick up a cell phone and call and say, hey, and they're trying to keep everybody together. And anyways, Night of the Creeps from 1986. That's the one with the killer tongues. Love that one. That one was cool. The tongue would run across the street, go up your leg. That was pretty cool. One of my favorite Halloween movies, believe it or not, is Halloween 3. I love Season of the Witch, where it's got nothing to do with the whole franchise, and it's the masks with that whole thing with the, they've got the electronics and the mask. That was a pretty good movie. I think
that's a very hotly debated movie.
Definitely not a Halloween movie, but it's kind of a weird thing they kind of went out on a ledge with there. But I liked it. I always liked it. I thought it had a great premise to it.
Yeah, no, I respect John Carpenter a lot. I especially like Halloween 2. I think is really strong.
That's a wicked one. Yeah.
And it's funny how he went from like Halloween. There's no blood in that movie.
That's
at
true,
all. But like Halloween 2, he totally, it's balls to the wall, man. It's just some really violent deaths in that.
Oh yeah, the sauna one in the hot tub there with the large-breasted nurse and the guy. They sneak off there, the ambulance driver.
I'm a huge fan of Escape from New York.
Oh, love it.
Movie. Yeah.
And I actually had an idea.
Right there on my wall.
Awesome.
Love it.
I love the score is awesome too. I love the soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
But like when I met John Carpenter, I had an idea for a prequel just on the Duke of New York.
Oh, wicked.
Do his whole backstory, like how did he get to Manhattan and how did he rise to power? And so when I met John Carpenter, I was all excited. And so I was like, what do you think? He was like, it's all right. He's a very dry, kind of sarcastic guy. You're not going to get a rise out of John Carpenter.
I would have been. I always was intrigued growing up, and still am today. I mean, if I see it, I get a chance to watch it, I'll watch it. But I mean, like, I love the whole storyline, how they go into how it's, I think, 1999 or whatever, and they're built a prison. And I wanted more of a backstory is what I wanted.
Yeah.
I craved that backstory for that movie. I still do.
When that movie came out, man, I made my parents take me back to see it like 4 times.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Love that movie, man.
Yeah.
He's the Duke.
Cool.
He's a number one.
Number one.
Donald Pleasance is awesome in that. I love Donald Pleasance.
And that movie's got so many huge stars in it. I mean, my God, Harry Dean Stanton, like everybody's in it. Yeah.
Oh, Ernest Borgnine is the best, and Harry Dean Stanton as
Brain.
Awesome.
And Barbara, and what's her face?
Andrea Barbaro.
Yeah, with the knockers on her.
Oh yeah.
I've seen her at a bunch of conventions. She still looks good. Good.
Oh yeah, she does. Yes, you're right. Yeah, she does look good.
No, I love that. And my last pick, I'm gonna go with Friday the 13th 6. Jason Lives again. It's got to do with the score of the movie. I mean, I love the Alice Cooper, the man behind the mask. I mean, just side by side with horror. Love it.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Those are my picks.
Cool. Billy, how about you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll preface this like I don't have the horror knowledge that you guys have. Like I'm about as lightweight as it comes when it comes to this section of movies. But I threw together what I liked, and so obviously my picks are going to show my inexperience here. But so I mean, for me, my favorite horror movies were always kind of the Halloween movies. So in the '80s, I liked them all. Like two, I really liked, and like Jim, I also like three as well. I did know there's some debate around that, but so those are my favorites. Number two is I know this is a cheesy movie, and I think it would be qualified as horror, but it's Stephen King, so I guess that helps. So I picked
Sure.
Maximum Overdrive.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, no, I always like that movie. Again, I know it's cheesy, it's not the best acting, but I kind of like the concept of the machines taking over and the AC/DC soundtrack.
You like the AC/DC track?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And it was kind of funny. I was in a bar last week, and I was there with a friend, and we were sitting, at the bar area on the stools, and they had the TV on, and they were playing Maximum Overdrive. And they were all like these like 21-year-olds and 30-year-olds, but there's no sound. So they were trying to figure out what was going on, and I'm explaining everybody like what's happening. And I was like leading the movie without a sound, so that was kind of cool. Number three, I'm going The Shining. So again, that's a very commercial.
Oh, that's a great pick. Great pick.
Yeah, I always liked that. And then a movie I always loved, and I had to ask Ken because I watched it so many times as a kid, but I couldn't remember what it was other than Alice Cooper plays this like, dark, like homeless guy on the street. And then he reminded me it was John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. So I don't know why that stuck with me, but I've always liked that movie. And when I see it, I keep watching it. So, and then last, I'll pick like the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So again, very lightweight stuff compared to you guys, but that's what I like.
Well, Nightmare on Elm Street, like in retrospect, gets kind of lightened because it became sort of like a more jokey.
Yeah,
but the first time I know, that's a dead serious movie. That's not really, that's not really joking around. Yeah, no, that's an intense movie.
And Johnny Depp gets liquefied in it.
That's right. Poor Johnny Depp. Didn't work out so good for him.
No, it did not. All right, so my list will be interesting. So number 5, I went with Fiend. I don't know if anyone knows that movie.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I know the movie you're talking about.
Don Dohler.
It's Don Dohler movie.
Yeah, it's I love that movie. It's just so that the main actor, he's so creepy in it. I
remember seeing pictures of it in Fangoria. I was like, oh man, it was definitely intense visually. But like I know Don Dohler made some real shitters too. So I was like,
I know. But
I
like.
If you're ready, I need to check that out. Definitely.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's a really creepy. Like the guy is obviously like, is he a zombie? Is he dead? We don't know.
Is that it there?
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
I mean, it's cheap makeup, but it's effective. It's got to look.
If you watch it, like for its time, it's low grade, but I don't know. I like that movie. I don't know. Maybe it's quaint to me, but I always liked it.
Oh no, I respect movies like that, especially Don Dohler. He was a very DIY, and he would actually publish, how he would do a lot of effects, which a lot of effects people wouldn't do. They wouldn't share their secrets, but he was cool like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great movie. You should watch it. You'll probably like it. I enjoyed it. And number 4 is Street Trash. I love that movie to death. Roy Fromm, one of my favorite 80s. What's that?
See, I'm embarrassed I didn't say that because that's another dude from School of Visual Arts.
Yep, Roy Fromm. Did you know him?
He was he was a couple years ahead of me.
Okay,
but like he first made Street Trash was first like a short movie.
That's right,
maybe like a 20 minutes, and they were showing it downtown. And I remember like I kept trying to go catch it, and I missed it. But then Roy Frumkes, who was he was another film teacher at SBA. He thought it was so good, he actually, was able to get enough money together to make the full movie. And a lot of that stuff was filmed at Roy Frumke's apartment building where I've hung out, like where where all the naked people come like running out of the building because they think the building's on fire. That's Roy's building.
Right.
And I've been over there multiple times. And I tell you, Street Trash is like one of them. That's a very New York movie.
Yep.
There's a couple. Movie. There's only a couple of movies that really capture like 80s New York, and that would be like Basket Case.
Yep, Basket Case, Frank Henenlotter. Yep.
It all happens in the sleaze of Times Square. And Frankenhooker.
Yeah, I love that movie. That's great.
You guys ever see Frankenhooker? That's New York City 80s. I think it's even the same neighborhood, because usually it was like the West like 40s were like where all the prostitutes were. And a lot of times when we would be coming back from metal shows, we kind of like ride around the block just to see, how many hot ones were out. Sometimes, I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to. Sometimes Josh would do more than look.
Oh shit!
And he would make it, and we would be driving around, in someone's car, and of course we'd all have to get out of the car so Josh could do his thing. With this woman of the evening, and we'd all be like, and we'd be in some terrible fucking neighborhoods, where you're like looking around, we're like, dude, hurry up! Would you hurry up?
Yeah, we gotta go. Oh shit! That's crazy,
man. I tell you, New York City 80s.
Yeah.
Wow. There's a great documentary you should check called Rubble Kings.
Oh yeah, I know of it. Yeah.
It talks about like how it was all run by gangs. Brooklyn, the Bronx, that's what like the Warriors was all about.
The Warriors, I love that movie too.
That whole meeting was based on some real things that happened until like there was a point where I think they were called, but it was a black gang, and they had some beef, and they sent some guy out to like kind of like squash a problem, and they killed this guy. But there were so many followers, like the chapters to this one gang, there was like 3,000 of them. They had chapters everywhere. And they basically came down on all the other guys like, everything is going to be cool now, or you're all going to die. And then after that, it all chilled out. But it was, there was a huge amount of gang activity, especially like the Lower East Side. There were blocks there. It was like, you could go buy a pound of heroin.
Oh, that's crazy.
And now all that's left now is like a trendy clothing store where CBGB's used to be. I think there's like a mural of the Bad Brains or something. That's like the only thing that remains from the Lower East Side. It's terrible that people. And there was the greatest video store too. There was a place called Kim's Video, and it had 3 stores. Like the first store was like first floor was all records. Second was like retail, but they had like imports from around the world. And then the top was rentals, and they had, super obscure rentals, and me and my girlfriend would just like, we'd spend hours combing through there, man. We'd go through like the Spanish porn section so we could find like Jess Franco, and we was like, look, I found it. What a fucking waste of time,
Oh my gosh.
But that's what we were into.
Cool. All right, so number 3, I took The Beyond because I like Falsey and I love that movie. It's one of my favorites. I just actually watched it. It's funny, I just was watching it like a few weeks back. I love that movie. Such a great film.
It really is. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen The Beyond, if you want to see just like a parade of insane practical effects, that's what. And the soundtrack is incredible. Fabio Frizzi. Like without Fabio Frizzi, those Fulci movies would not be the same.
No, they would never. You're right. You're totally right about that.
He added some just like the Goblin movies in Suspiria. The Goblin score. You have to have those two things. To make the greatness. Yep,
they go hand in hand for sure. And then number 2, I took Nightmare on Elm Street 3 because I do like it. I know it's. I don't know. It has probably the best story, at least the completion of that early arc. I love the Dawkins song. I saw it's one of my. I always like the song, you know. So I took it. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, you love it too. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. I like that Dawkins song. Is so great. I love the video. That video with Freddie. So great. I don't know. I love it. I love it. And that's how, like, just as a quick story, that's how Horror Metal Sounds, my website. That's how it became to be. Because I used to write for a bunch of websites, and I was writing for one called Dead Rhetoric at the start. It was a new site. So the owner of the site knew that I was writing for Fango and stuff like that. And so he asked me to write a column. So I created Horror Metal Sounds as a column. First column went up. It was fine. Second column, I wanted to write about, for Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And he's like, you can't write about Dawkins, man. What do you mean I can't write about Dawkins? Oh, we don't want any of that on our site. I'm like, what? What does Dawkins got to do with your site? Like, it's metal. It's part of the movie. So we got into a fight. I quit. And then basically at the end of the day, I started my own website. So.
Oh, right on, man. Yeah, I had a friend. I remember I was working a horror convention somewhere. I had a friend. He was in like a psychobilly band, and he could hit that chorus for Dream Warriors like flawlessly.
Oh, nice.
I was like, sing that again. Do it again.
Nice,
but I will go on record as absolutely hating Dawkins.
Fair enough.
I think on Dawkins.
But that song is good.
Well, the bass player Jeff Pilson, he was born in Peekskill, same town as me and Josh. And Mel Gibson was actually born in Peekskill.
I've interviewed Jeff Pilson. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, I saw him on an interview. Yeah, he seemed, he's doing definitely doing his own thing. Well, I think it was Don Dokken himself that really turned me off. I was about like, there's a guy who's got no attitude, there's no attitude or aggression, And when I saw that interview with Jeff Pilson, he said that was because Don Dokken was on Xanax and vodka all the time, which totally makes sense. That's the kind of style you acquire when you're on vodka and Xanax.
Fair enough. And number one,
I have a lot of hate.
Well, that's cool. That's all right, man. I mean, it's not for everybody. Number one is Hellraiser. That's my favorite horror film of all time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Clive Barker is one of my favorite writers of all time.
Oh, yeah.
I own all his stuff. Met the man several times. Love the guy. Love Hellraiser. It's one of my favorite all-time horror movies. For me.
No, he brought, definitely something to horror that hadn't been there before. And I remember reading, the Books of Blood.
Me too.
And that was really some of the best horror I'd read in a long time, like Midnight Meat Train.
Oh, great. Yeah,
awesome.
Great story.
Awesome.
Yeah, Clive's the best. I mean, he was, I was reading Fango back in the day. That's where I first heard about Clive Barker. So when Hellraiser came out, it blew me away. I saw it in the theater and I was like, holy shit. I'd never seen anything like it at the time. So great. Such a great movie.
And I don't think there was much going on in terms of British horror at the time. Britain was big with the Hammer movies, but I think they had kind of fell off a little bit, and I think that kind of brought the industry back. I thought Nightbreed was really good too, even though
I love Nightbreed. Yes, yeah.
It didn't come out quite perfect, but excellent, recreation of the story.
Well, watch the Blu-ray that came out, I think 5 or 6 years ago, where they basically put his cut of the movie out. Have you seen that?
No, I'm not sure if I've seen that cut.
Oh, you should look it up. It's really good because they went back to all the cuts that everything that was taken out was put back in, and the story is much better now with his version. I love it.
Right on. And I should apologize. Originally, Ken said we were going to pick our top 5 speed metal bands.
Yeah.
I was like, give me our top 5 80s horror instead.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's cool.
No problem.
Sorry if I made that awkward for anyone.
No.
No, dude. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm a horror fan. I know Jim loves horror, and I think Billy's not so much a horror fan, but he'll get into the spirit of it, right, Billy?
It's rubbing off.
I'll pick away a couple of the movies you guys talked about.
Yeah, I've wrote them all down.
Maybe I'll watch them. Some of them don't sound my thing, but
well, you should see like Gates of Hell for sure, or like City of the Living Dead. It's about a priest who hangs himself, and he just randomly pops back up, and the people who see him first, they start to bleed from their eyes, and then they vomit up all their intestines. It's the greatest thing ever.
All right, I just wrote those two down.
Good movies.
Oh well, what do we call it? That's Death, Regurgitated Guts.
Yep.
Almost everything on Scream Bloody Gore is based on a horror movie.
Yeah.
Scream Bloody Gore is based on Reanimator. Torn to Pieces is based on Cannibal Ferox.
Yep, Cannibal Ferox. Evil Dead. The song
Evil Dead is self-explanatory.
Yeah.
I love Land of No Return is such a great song, man. I fucking just the greatest, man. Love that song.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys to hear. Hope I can hear back from you when the Luchatola comes out.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Let me know when it's ready, because I would love to.
I'll holler at you guys. It's very much a tribute to that early classic Death, but nice. But I'm a huge Doom fan, so it's got a lot of Doom to it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, man. Let us know, because I would love to hear it. Yeah. And I'll even write a review for it for you as well. From my
I appreciate it, man.
Oh, no problem, dude. I would love it. I sounds great. I had no idea you were even making new music before. That's why I asked you earlier about it.
Yeah. So I started Luchatola about 2006.
Yeah.
I kind of I guess it's maybe it's an ego thing. I got tired of playing other people's music. I was like, I'm going to do my own stuff. Yeah. So a lot of stuff was, definitely influenced by, the movies that I love and stuff like that. A lot of European horror influence goes into it. Plus a lot of books I used to read, like Ray Bradbury, H.P. Lovecraft. I love cosmic horror, stuff like that. So it's, Luchatola has been a great way for me to kind of really do, my kind of style, the old grungy thrash that I like, plus, stuff like Coroner or Merciful Fate. And I try and marry it with, soundtracks like Goblin and Fabio Frizzi, because I think Atmosphere is a lot of bands. I think that's kind of why that Bloody Incantation record went over so big, because it's got atmosphere. A lot of records are just missing that. They're not built. You're not building something up. Not that it needs to be pompous or or something like that, but you need a vibe.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to hear it. Very excited.
It'll be great.
No, I'm really excited to get it out. I'm hoping it bums out all the ex-Toxik members.
I hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm not a nice guy. I dunk on people all the time. I can't help it. Someone's definitely going to catch up and probably kick my ass about something I said tonight. I hope I made it entertaining. That's what it's got to be entertaining.
Yeah, great. No, I greatly appreciate you joining.
Yeah, me too, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, man.
Been a pleasure, man. Real pleasure, brothers.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to sign off. We're going to say good night. All right. See you later.
Good night.
Stay true to your path. Metal.
Yes.